Well, howdy, folks, and welcome back to another episode of Follow the Leader. I'm your host, Lee Larson, and y'all, we have a very special guest coming from beyond the Montana state lines, from Iowa, House 72 candidate Matt Robinson. Welcome.
Well, Lee, I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Absolutely. Matt, tell us, you're running for office, like I said, in Iowa, House 72. It- What was it like to be to have your childhood in Iowa, and why are you feeling called to come into politics now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was born and raised here in Dubuque. I grew up in the district that I'm running to represent right now. And I grew up poor, as a lot of us did. Dubuque is a very working class town, a lot of union density around here. And, a lot of us never had a lot. We always made it by, which was very nice. And I think a lot of folks can resonate with what that's like. But what really drove me into running is the fact that, I spent my 20s slaving away, working tons of overtime, working as hard as I could. And when I got out on the other side after a decade of hard work, I didn't have much to show for it. And I went, man, this really just shouldn't be this hard. You know, I grew up in a house where we didn't really talk politics very often. And the extent of talking politics was with my father. And he's a conservative. I spent a lot of hours listening to Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity on the radio. And at that time growing up, I thought that's just the way it was. That's how it is. Um, but growing up really transformed that. And being in the working world, seeing the injustices, seeing how there is a hoarding of power and money at the top, and how the rest of us are left to fight amongst ourselves for the crumbs, really frustrated me. And in particular here in Iowa, I felt like our state legislature wasn't listening to working class people. They weren't listening to the needs that we need addressed, like better wages and better jobs. And then they were actively taking on workers by, this is many years ago at this point now, but Chapter 20 in Iowa Code that gave teachers and public sector union members the right to collectively bargain, and they gutted that. Our teachers don't get to bargain for their rights anymore. They don't get to bargain for their wages. They've attacked the unemployment insurance system. Now we have less time to file, less weeks we can file for, and less money that we get. And, when folks are at their worst moment, they've lost their job, they have no source of income. Our state is hell bent on making it harder. And so all those things, you culminate all that, and after working so hard and having so little, I said, someone's got to step up and say something. Someone's got to do something. And I decided that someone was going to be me. If no one else was going to do it, I'm going to step up. We're going to have a conversation, and working class Iowans, everyday Iowans, they're going to have a voice down at the Capitol. So that's a little bit of the story that got me here.
Well, and what I love about your story, you worked, as you said, very hard for the last 10 years, particularly in carpentry. You're part of the carpenter union. Um, and really, your whole life has been about building. And that's something that listeners and viewers can go check out on your website, is that you are a forward-thinking, future-thinking person who wants to build, and you're looking around saying, "You're not giving me a lot to build with."
Right. Right. We don't have the
Like,
materials. It's not a whole lot unlike if I show up on a job site and we don't have the prerequisite materials to build what we're set there to build that day. We're not going to achieve much. And I feel like our government, our state government here in Iowa at least, is doing that. They're taking the materials away from us to build a better future. So that's why I'm here. You referenced, I mean, that's our campaign slogan. Build a better Iowa. Because that's what I know how to do. I know how to build.
and it's salt of the earth, like you said. You're looking around and you're like, someone's got to step up, and you did. I spent some time in Iowa, Wisconsin area. My ex-boyfriend, he had family out there, and I spent Thanksgiving, and it's just so beautiful. The lands, I mean, so much timber, so much water. And his family was lovely, and I just remember them being so mild-mannered. It took quite a bit to get them worked up, and people are worked up. The mild-mannered Midwesterners are upset, and that's saying something. And, have you found as you've been talking with other people, whether it's carpentry or just in the labor industry, how are they feeling? How have other unions been affected?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on who you're talking to. In the construction industry, we're still experiencing a bit of a boom right now. But, a lot of people are not recognizing that boom we're experiencing is to build back better stuff that Biden did. That's a lot of Biden dollars that are subsidizing the jobs that we're working on right here and right now. But I do talk to, we got a pretty big UAW presence here in Dubuque. We're not automakers, but we have a John Deere plant. John Deere is very Iowa, and a lot of folks right here in Dubuque have lost their jobs at that John Deere plant. Their jobs are going to Mexico. Their jobs are going to Canada, and those types of jobs that are leaving our state are getting directly tied to things like the tariffs that the Trump administration has put in place. The lack of incentive to have business in this state, it's abhorrent at this point. People are losing their jobs, and we see people leaving Iowa. People understand what's happening. People know that when they cross the border, if you're in the construction industry like I am, when you cross the border into Wisconsin or Illinois, because I'm lucky to live right on the river, you're going to make $10 an hour more. That says it all. What more do you need at that point? We need to transform the way we look at the labor movement in the state of Iowa. We need to do better for workers.
Absolutely. When you joined your union, or maybe back up, you've been a part of the carpenter union. What motivated you to join a union versus continue doing it on your own
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
not?
That's a great question. So I am a proud member of the United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners, local 678 out of Dubuque. And I'm a pretty new member. I'm only in about my third, I'm about 3.5 years of membership. I'm still an apprentice. I still go to class every now and then and learn the trade. I haven't got my journey card yet. But I joined the carpenters because, like I said, I spent, the better part of a decade and a half, working in the construction industry, working for non-union outfits. We were the only advocates for ourselves. And what I understood is there's strength in there's strength in numbers, and there's power in that unity. And I never really knew. This isn't in Iowa. Unions aren't quite as strong as they are in some other parts of the country. Our union density is not what we'd hope for, at least. But I got the opportunity to actually meet one of the business agents here in Dubuque, and he said, "Hey, if you're looking for a change, get a hold." And so I sat down and we talked, and just learning about things like the benefits, the pension, all the stuff that at that point I'm working for a dollar. That's all I'm doing. I'm working for a wage and a paycheck. I don't have benefits. I was rolling the dice and hoping I didn't get hurt or I didn't end up with any kind of illness because I didn't have health insurance. I had nothing to rely on when I go to retire because you didn't have enough money to set anything aside for retirement. So I'm really thankful to have joined the union because it totally changed my mindset from having a job to having a career and something that I could really fall back on in the future. And moving that forward into the political conversation, I don't think just us union members should have that type of privilege. I think every person in the United States who works a job and works hard and puts their time in should have that same kind of privilege. We should have health insurance. We should have our pensions and our retirement. People should not be worried about having to work until they're dead and hoping that they don't get sick because they don't have health insurance.
Absolutely. Well, and it's so costly, and the health insurance covers so little too. So it's like it feels scammy. It's just it's just so overinflated, and at the end of the day, it's hurting citizens' pocketbooks, which is something that you go back to a lot um, in your social media posts on your website. This is very much a financially motivated campaign.
Yeah.
Like, you have a very clear vision, and I really respect that. Um, what has it been like as you've navigated Iowa? Like you said, you were raised red, raised on Limbaugh. What has been the response in your community to you running?
Generally pretty good. I get a lot when I'm out on a door. I'll knock on a door and you get talking to someone and they're happy to talk. It's like you said, this mild mannered Midwest, the Iowa nice profile. Everyone's happy to talk. They want to get chit chatting with you. And then, you get into politics and they're like, okay, a little trepidation there at that point. And the most popular question I get is, well, are you a Democrat or a Republican? Or if you're on a Republican door, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? And I usually like to make people guess because we've been talking about things that are, we're all in agreement on. We're talking about things like water quality. We're talking about better jobs and better wages and, people having better insurance and lower costs for the people. We talk about things that we agree on. And then all of a sudden it comes to a party line. And I just tell them, I say, guess. I want to know what you think at this point. And, 9 times out of 10, they get it right. They know. But what we need to understand is a lot of the times and I hate to use this old tired out line, we're not as far apart as we think we are. There are a lot of things that we can agree on, and there are a lot of things that we can get done. But I will go back to it all comes back to the corruption and the power and the oligarchs that are controlling the power at the top. And they're not going to allow us to get real work done and do meaningful things for people that matter.
Absolutely, and one of the things too with these oligarchs, and you touched on it earlier, but I wanna circle back, are these tariffs, right?
Yeah.
So many materials that either you use or construction or someone in these type industries, a lot of it is not from the United States, and then there's tools and machines that are also not in the United States. Have you heard, some concerns of your colleagues about what these tariffs are gonna do to their businesses?
I mean, not as much. We come from a privileged spot. The guys I work with, we work for a larger, at least for the area, we got about 100 guys, 100 carpenters, commercial construction outfit. Uh, with the rise of prices, we're generally going to hold steady for the most part. But there is a possibility of a downturn. The downside is when you talk about working class people and you talk about, people out on a construction site, union carpenters like myself, more often than not, they're not going to see the effect of this until it's right there in their face. And the problem is it creeps in so slowly with the prices rising over time. And then all of a sudden, 2 years from now, when there's no work and we're all laid off and we're all looking for jobs, we're too far removed from when the tariffs went into effect for people to go, oh, that's why this happened to me. But it is why it's happening. There are so many decisions that get made that impact our lives. I do the best I can. When I'm on a job site, just say, hey guys, you got to open your eyes. You got to understand what's happening around you because, these things will have an effect on us someday. It might not be today. It might not be tomorrow, but we're going to feel it.
Absolutely. Well, and like you said, the reason why there is still a boom is because of things that were passed during the previous administration, and so things do take time, and getting caught up in, like, the politics of it all, the partisan nature of it all, when
Hmm.
maybe we should be having conversations where we're making folks guess. That's a brilliant campaign strategy. If they like you and they can't figure it out, it's really cool.
Yeah.
How, Go sorry if I
No, I was gonna say
interrupted
it's
you.
it's just it's fun for me because I mean, folks will be listening to this, but if you happen to be watching it, I I'm a little Republican coded. I usually have a cowboy hat on. I'm wearing my flannels. I got this mustache. I look like what people think a Republican might look like. So when I start talking about things that are right out of the Democratic Socialist playbook, they're like, "Whoa, hold on a second. I like that idea, but I'm not sure about it coming out of your mouth."
Right, right, and it's wild too to forget Americans' history, whether it's Iowa or Appalachia or out here in Montana, those unions and bargaining power, um, that's old school Democrat too. That's
Hell yeah.
that's some of the old blue. Even just thinking about Blair Mountain and all that. Tell me, so you're, I had this written down and now I can't see my own handwriting. I apologize.
No, you're
Um,
all right.
the other part the other part that I enjoyed when I was in Iowa was, and I mentioned this earlier, was the amazing natural resources you have and just how beautiful it is. Do you get time to spend out in your public lands?
Yeah, I do. And, I'm actually really privileged to, be up here in Dubuque. For those that don't know, we're right along the Mississippi River on the east coast there of Iowa. And it is beautiful. It's the driftless region, it's where the glaciers didn't pass over. So we have bluffs and we have big hills and we have all kinds of forestry. And, it's so beautiful, and we have a lot of nice parks and natural resources in the area, especially wetlands and some forests. But we have an issue here in the state of Iowa. We have big ag running completely unchecked in this state, and the closest thing that any majority party has dared to do is to try and incentivize farmers to do the right thing. Now, we know that there's a way. We know there's ways to do sustainable agriculture that benefits the farmer and benefits the land. We know there's ways to scale it up so that farmers are not going to take a loss. Because here's the problem: farmers are already at a loss because we killed the markets for them. They can't sell their beans this year. I mean, when you look at Iowa, we're corn, beans, and pork. And all those things are incredibly hard to sell this year. And we can thank the Trump tariffs for that. So you already got farmers in a pinch. What are they going to do? They're looking for every little advantage they can to squeeze out a buck. And I don't blame them for that. But it's having a devastating impact on our natural resources. Our waterways are some of the worst in the country. We have so many nitrates getting into our waterways, most of our public beaches. You don't take your kids out to swim. There's always going to be signs out saying, do not swim here. Um, we also are battling the cancer rates in Iowa, among the highest in the United States. I do believe, I think only one state tops us, and that's Kentucky. When we are looking, and it's growing. These are growing cancer rates. It affects everyone. I actually just, within the last week, found out one of my friends, a little older friend, but has cancer. They're diagnosed with cancer. And that's not uncommon in the state. Everyone knows someone going through a battle with cancer. What's frustrating is that the current leadership in this state wants to just turn a blind eye to it. They want to brush it under the rug because they know if you truly want to solve the issue, we have to take on big agriculture. We need to get all of these chemicals that are being sprayed on the crops and running into our streams and waterways and, perforating down into the aquifers and getting into our drinking water and into our wells. We need to curb it. So, there's going to come a reckoning, because how many people are we going to let die? I hate to be so blunt and so negative about it, but how many people are we going to let die before we treat this as the issue that it is?
And I'm glad you bring it up because when we talk about, again, going back to that blue and red language and those language divisions, um, I don't want to assume anything, but I went to a Christian conference in Appalachia last spring for myself, and one of the speakers talked about sustainability and how it's biblical, and she used all the scripture to describe it. But she never once said climate change. She never once said, any of those like liberal words she didn't use. She just stuck. And I watched so many people. And then she also reached them by saying, like, when I talk about big ag, or, when I talk about the farming industry and the changes we need to make, I'm not talking about the farmer that knows every head, every name of his
Hmm.
cattle, right? Like
Yeah.
that is like the loving, responsible stewardship that we want. That is the small farmer I want to purchase my meat from. Like that connectedness, and big ag takes that from us. It doesn't like, and I want to stress that to the listeners that it's folks in Matt's world, or I know that he's carpentry specifically, but it affects all of us when you start messing with how we eat and our local food and how the treatment of the animals, like there's this whole spiritual component um, that was really beautiful to watch this woman articulate, but again, that language. And then one by one, I saw all these Appalachian folks kind of like, I didn't think about it that way, but you're right. And I was like, this language thing is a real barrier for us.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm especially just drawn to your campaign because you're reaching a lot of people.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's the point. We want to talk about politics in a way that is a little more unassuming. I want to talk politics in a way that people can digest it. I actually got this from my mom. My mom never really liked talking politics, and I had always been interested my entire life. So when I really geared up over the last handful of years to start getting into politics and running for office, her and I had a lot of conversations. And she finally said, Matt, you know what? I don't mind talking politics with you because I feel like I understand what's going on. I get what you're talking about. I said, well, yeah, because we don't always have to talk about everything in these very lofty terms and talk like we're writing laws and bills. We need to talk about things that people can understand. What do people understand? People are dying because of the chemicals in our water. And there's not a single person, Democrat or Republican, that's pro cancer. Okay. We know that. So how do we figure out the issue? How do we solve that issue? And I think you talked about some really great things too. You know, when we talk about like, I don't want to pinch out the local family farm. You don't see a lot of that in Iowa anymore, unfortunately. I mean, and that's getting into a bigger issue of private equity buying up stock of farmland, housing, you name it. That's a big issue for all of us in terms of affordability. But, you know, especially if we keep it on agriculture, you know, I know plenty of people, especially in this area, right in Dubuque County. They might not be my constituents, but I know them and I know that they practice farming in the best way that they can. You know, they're not trying to harm the land. They care about the land. Like you said, they know their livestock. They know what they're doing. But you don't have that when you have a large private equity company coming in, buying up acres upon acres of land. They are hiring out all this work. They don't care. They're there for the profit. And their profits are killing people in this state.
And like you said, it's just becoming more and more difficult to repair you got the right to repair. That's always the conversation that's playing a role.
Yes.
And then some other I mean, I did not have, Minneapolis, Minnesota on my bingo card for, like, the big Midwestern city that would take American fame or global fame. But I do wanna kinda ask, what does immigration look like in Iowa, particularly in your world? And what are some of the policies that are helping or hurting Iowans?
Yeah. I mean, what immigration looks like in Iowa, it's all over the place. You know, if we didn't have immigration in Iowa, we wouldn't have enough people in this state. We wouldn't be able to fill the jobs. I mean, you look at a state that is full of construction and agriculture jobs. Actually, flip flop that agriculture and construction. Agriculture takes number one in this state. And, you know, who are we hiring? We're hiring the folks that are coming in from outside of this country to, you know, work in the fields, work in the slaughterhouses, work, you know, on the factory floors. And, you know, we got a lot of meat processing in the area. Um, Without those immigrants, we wouldn't have enough people to fill the jobs. Just plain and simple. It's not a matter of who wants to do the jobs, who's qualified to do the jobs. We just wouldn't have the bodies. So we do. We have a lot of pockets across the state where, you know, the density of immigration is a lot higher. Typically going to be surrounded by or surrounding meat packing plants, you know, big agricultural operations. And, you know, I think everyone's on edge right now. You know, we all saw what happened up in Minnesota. We don't want that to happen in our state. And I think I'd be able to go as far to say I can speak for a good majority of people, Democrats, Republicans, and independents alike. They understand the importance of the folks doing these jobs in this state. You know, whether it's the person that's turning over the bed in your hotel room when you're out of town working, or whether it's the person serving you food or working in that meat packing. We know the importance of these people in our community. Um, we don't want to see them leave. I think folks want to see legal immigration. They want to see a pathway to citizenship. And, you know, this is the type of stuff that I can't handle as a state legislator. You're going to have to talk to Congress about that one. But We
Uh,
also do have moments in our state legislature right now. There's a bill working through to make sure that Iowa police forces are working with ICE when ICE comes into the localities, demanding that the police have to cooperate with ICE. And, for being a bit of a red state, I don't think there was a lot of popularity amongst the people for that bill. We had a lot of cities immediately come out and say, you can pass the bill, but we're not going to do it. Cities came together at their local board meetings, their local city council meetings, and said, we're not going to do that. Because I think overall, it's the Midwest. We care about our neighbors. We care about the people around us, and we know these people are our neighbors, and we're going to fight for them too.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, and that is exactly the kind of vibe I felt when I was there, a few years ago, was just you coulda ran around and delivered, cakes or desserts to anybody, and it would've you "Come on in." Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
just a neighborly place, and because you said that you don't have the bodies, that rural population or that scarce population, it pushes folks to really consider what's important. Are we gonna sit here and do a bunch of racial, gender stuff, or are we gonna get the job done? Like,
Yeah.
and I've seen that here in Montana too, where it's because we don't have people the remarks that I saw, down in Texas where I was raised, like, you just don't have them as much because they just need you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so thank you for
We're
that.
we're in the same spot. I just had a conversation recently. Again, Iowa legislature in full swing. The Iowa legislature convenes the first 4 months out of the year. I know every state does it a little bit different. So right now we're in full swing for the legislature in Iowa, and we have the same thing. We have these bills that are going to harm the workforce. They're going to harm having people in our state because they're currently trying to they have a bill that's going to eliminate affirmative action in this state. Now, that sends a signal. I don't know how people can't get through their head. That sends a signal to anyone that thinks about moving to this state, that thinks about growing up in this state and continuing to live in this state. We don't value diversity. We don't value you. We don't value anything. We value only the people we care about. We value profits over people. Um, and that's hurtful and it's harmful. And when we're already in the condition in this state where we have more people leaving than we have coming to the state, I just don't think that's the right direction. I think we have to take a different tone. We want people here and we have a lot to offer. Iowa's a beautiful state.
It is, and like, as we've talked about, it is so beautiful. It's rural. What does it look like affordability-wise? I know you're saying you're watching people leave for work and things, but, I mean, how is it changing family planning even?
I can tell you, I'm 32 years old. A lot of folks my age not having kids because we're already fighting just to get by ourselves. And a lot of people I talk to that say, "Yeah, I'm not thinking about kids because I can barely afford to take care of myself. I can't bring someone else into this." Um, and it does. It's hard for me to believe because I know in Iowa we're pretty lucky in terms of cost of living. We have some of the best, cost of living uh, rates in the country in terms of your per capita per dollar type thing, and but we're still struggling. So I can only imagine what it's like in other places. Because yeah, I don't know a whole lot of people that come from the working class at least, come from that, maybe a little poor, little poverty in the upbringing, been working your whole life. I don't know a lot of folks that are really breaking through and succeeding at this point in this economy. I make roughly $55,000 a year as a union carpenter. And I was talking with some folks in the area, and we pretty much came to the agreement that that's really kind of the bare minimum right now. So it blows our mind that there's a lot of people that are making a lot less than that because really at 55K, you have enough to provide for yourself. You pay your bills, you keep the roof over your head, you have some food on the table, but you don't have frills. You don't get to go to that concert you want to go to. You don't get to go to a sporting event. You that's pretty tight. And it's a shame that people are working so hard and they can't enjoy life. But beyond that, Lee, I gotta say, it's not just that. I also know people that are working 2 to 3 jobs, fighting to just even get by that. Folks that are working for close to a minimum wage, which is 7.25 an hour here in Iowa. How do you survive? You don't. You have to work a second job. You have to work a third job. And if you have a family to provide for, you just have no choice. You work your entire life away. As the most advanced nation in the world, we can do better than that.
Absolutely, and it does. It can be so frustrating. Like, how are we supposed to be the wealthiest? We're supposed to be the leaders, and yet the people are just suffering so much. When, you talked about being 32, like, I'm very thankful to hear of more politicians who are talking exactly that. I'm 32 and I can't afford kids. I wanna, and that's needs to be said. It needs to be, reflected in our leadership, having that mindset, because for so long, especially like you say on your website, like, wealthier folks are calling the shots and creating a world that Americans can't afford. They're talking about family comes first. Well, yeah, we do love our families, but we can't afford it. How about a job comes first? And like, and that's something I've really been paying attention to, kind of in the national conversation is this emphasis on family, but so few people can get there financially.
Yeah, I mean, it just there's so much emphasis on family, but
Uh-oh, did we cut
there's
out?
so much. Oh, am I cutting out here? Sorry about that. Um,
But
there's
yeah,
so
if you could
much.
start over, sorry. I didn't hear you for a
Yeah,
second.
no, that's okay. There's so much emphasis on family, but what there is also is so much tone deafness on what a family looks like, because they always look at this family as this very nuclear structure, and it's a mom and it's dad and it's the kids. And I'm not even going to get into LGBTQ and all that other stuff, although I'm happy to talk about it. But what I want to talk about is they just don't think about what it looks like when you have a non-traditional family. Because where I grew up, we didn't have a lot. And mom and dad got divorced, and dad had trouble keeping a job because dad was an alcoholic. So what did I do? I worked my ass off to make sure that we had a roof over our head. I spent the better part of my 20s not squirreling away money and saving for myself, but giving money over and handing it over to my dad to make sure that he could keep the house, make sure he could keep the lights on, make sure he was provided for. They don't think about this stuff. And that's really why I'm running. We lack perspective in our government. We lack people with lived experience and perspective of what it looks like outside of that little box that they form down in the state legislature. Because there's a lot of people with lived experiences. They don't have to be exactly like mine, but they understand what it's like to either have to provide for a family member, provide for a parent, take care of someone else, have to put someone else first in your life, work very hard, work your tail off, and not get ahead. And nothing pisses me off more than when I hear Republicans say, well, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, quit buying avocado toast. Kiss my rear. You guys nailed my
And
boots to
that's
the floor.
nailed them. And then you wanna turn around and ask me to lick those boots too, huh? So it's just
Yeah.
it doesn't it doesn't ever end. So, in the next month or so, what are your plans for engaging with the community for your House
Well,
72 district?
yeah, I mean, in the next month or so, we're going to do what we can. But as you know, you're in Montana and I'm here in Iowa. It's pretty cold this time of the year. We're getting a little warm spell here. So I'm doing my best to get out on some doors while I can while it's warm. But I know the snow's still coming back for us. We're not out of it yet. This is our false spring. But we put a big emphasis on knocking doors. You will never get a better conversation than meeting a person where they're at. And that doesn't mean physically where they're at, although it helps when you're right there on their doorstep, but you go there and you level with them. on their field, on their playing ground, and you talk to them about what's important to them. So, that is a number one. The key for this campaign is we try and knock as many doors as we can in this district. Talk to as many people as we can. We have a couple events planned. We're working on getting some listening posts put together so people can come to us if they'd like. A couple community events, more fundraiser and rally type, just to kind of get the energy up and going. Because we know that once the ground thaws here, we're off and running. We have a big fight against us. We didn't really talk a lot about the race, but this seat is a seat that was long held by Democrats, and it flipped in 2024. And it flipped because we had a lot of outside groups that came in and invested in this race. Americans for Prosperity and the state Republican Party came in to the tune of almost $500,000, and they bought the seat. Uh, so we know we're up against a big challenge. We know we're not going to be able to fundraise in that capability. We're going to do our best to keep up with them. But at the end of the day, the one thing we can do is get on the ground and we can outwork them. So that's maybe not exactly what the next month looks like, but I got 10 months of door knocking and community engagement ahead of me.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great point. I mean, you talk about how you were coming for basically an empty suit that cost a pretty penny, half million, and you are. But we're seeing a lot of hope across the country. I mean, I'm from Texas originally. I just saw 2 Texas seats. What?
Yeah.
Um, One of those seats, by the way, was where a significant number of Jan 6 riders came from. So I was like, this is huge. And I think it's gonna be folks like you, that keep going back to these economic issues that can transcend the political divide. And really, I hope that, as your campaign continues to unfold, that you record some of those conversations so that others
Mhm.
can learn from you because it's inspiring. I even seen the way you've handled some comments on social media, and I'm like, he's moving, y'all. Like, watch this.
Well, you got
Um,
to be careful. I get a little petty sometimes, but no, seriously though. Thank you. I mean, I appreciate that. I always tell people I'm nothing special. I'm not a politician. I'm an American first. I'm an Iowan. I care about people. I care about my friends. I care about my neighbors. I always tell everybody I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy trying to make a difference, and that's really all it boils down to.
Well, it's a good point, and then when you talk about being just a guy, a big concern that folks have is that people run for politics just to stay in it and make it a new career. Is that something you're looking to do in the long term?
Well, I mean, what people don't realize is that in the Iowa legislature, we don't get paid jack squat. So Iowa legislators are paid $25,000 a year, which isn't nothing, but it's not enough to sustain. So I am going to be the type of legislator that's going to have to come back in the summertime, and I'll be swinging a hammer and pouring concrete and working with the old crew because I still got to make some money to fill out the rest of my year. And that's part of the problem though too. Like we laugh about it, but that's also why the Iowa legislature, and you see this a lot in other states, are comprised of retirees, business owners, doctors, lawyers, the folks that can afford to have a low paying job to go serve in the legislature. It's not a financial hit for them. For me, I've had a lot of people say, "How are you even going to do it?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm going to figure out when I get there. I know I can't live off of a legislator's salary. I'll probably be working off the union bench in the summers and, do what I can, still be in touch with my constituents. But, we're going to be a man of the people. We're still going to be out there being a union carpenter in the summer. And I don't know, in my opinion, there's no better way to stay connected with your community than being there, working there side by side with them. But yeah, this, God willing, if I can make a career out of it, great, but I'm not going to be making a lot of money off of it. I'll tell you that.
Amen. And absolutely right. It's a very serious, and it's something we struggle here with. I mean, here in Montana, we got seats bought out to our senator and our governor. Not even from here, corporate all the way, just
Sure.
planted kind of thing.
Yep.
So totally know what that's like to feel like you don't know jack. You don't know what the real world is, and you haven't. Um, it's uh it's messy, but at the same time, it would be so beautiful, just karmic justice if you when you get elected, you bring in some union guys and maybe y'all fix the Capitol or something. You fix a room as, like, a symbolic gesture that the unions are back. I just wanna see that. There's a lot of people desperate to feel like, hey, they need a hero, someone like you. I know that you say you're just a guy, I'm just your average Joe, but,
Yeah.
like, for a lot of people, like, you're representing something bigger, that there is someone who will advocate, and I really wanna thank you for that, and I'm sure a lot of, your voters and followers also see that with you too. For people who feel really inspired by your message today, how can they volunteer, donate, or learn more about your campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. Uh, First thing you can do, you can go to www.buildabetteriowa.com. That's the campaign website. That's the best way to find everything related to the campaign. What helps us out the most, if you have the time and you're in the area, you can click to volunteer. You fill out a form on the website that lets us know what you can do. And we might be talking to folks all across the country here. I mean, Lee, you're halfway across the country from me right now. There's ways to be involved. You can phone bank. You can sign up to phone bank. You can we have jobs for folks that might not be right here on the ground in Dubuque. So don't let geography be a barrier to you. And then for those that can, I always have to make the plug. I wish we could run campaigns on hopes and dreams because we'd have a hell of a good one, but dollars fuel campaigns. So if anyone is able to, you can always click to donate on the website there too. Even $5 goes a long way. $5 buys a yard sign, and we get to put a yard sign out and show some support in the community. So those are really great ways. Otherwise, follow all the socials. You can find me at Matt Robinson for Iowa. Pretty much on all the socials: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Follow, like, give me all the love so that we can get this message out to more people. That is eventually the goal. At the end of the day, we want this message to go to more people. We want more people to feel empowered to be active in this cycle. We want more people to feel like they're listened to and they're heard, and they can be a part of this movement.
Absolutely. And that's exactly I mean, like you talk about, seeing yourself in you, being a part of the people. Here you are, you're wearing the hat, the camo hat, you're wearing the flannel. Online, you got the cowboy hat. Like, you walk the walk. You're of the people, and,
Yeah.
I sure hope that, Iowa shows up for you because 'cause you're doing it.
Well, we're gonna fight really hard. We're not going down without a little bit of a tussle here.
Well, I know we appreciate you, and again, you're giving hope to folks across the country, and who are seeing themselves in not only you as the leader, but also your community. There's a lot of people who are union folks that watch this. Just thank you. Is
Absolutely.
there,
It's truly my
anything
pleasure.
that well, that's what I was gonna say. Is there anything else before we wrap up that
You know what? I can leave you with this. Stay strong, stay hopeful. Better days are ahead. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think we could fix it.
Amen. Amen. Well, Matt Robinson from Iowa House 72. That's it. 72, folks, Iowa.
One.
Y'all got to check him out. Go over and Matt Robinson for Iowa on his socials is also his website. Um, that's another episode of Follow the Leader. Again, Matt Robinson, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Folks, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. What do you think about this? What do you think? Matt Robinson out of Iowa. Alrighty, folks, I'll see y'all next time on Follow the Leader. Bye bye.